Welcome to Prevention Through Connection. I'm Kathy Samuels, Project Director for the Manhasset Community Coalition Against Substance Abuse, also known as CASA. Since 2001, CASA has existed as a resource to reduce youth substance use. We strive to reach youth before they are in trouble by connecting parents, youth, school, and community as partners in this common goal. Through this program, we hope to provide the community with resources to positively affect the quality of life for families and youth. Today's show focuses on the evidence-based program called Active Parenting of Teens. By strengthening our relationship with our teens, we can provide a healthy foundation in the prevention of substance use and guide their development to be responsible and caring adults. Our guest today is Tim Jahn, Human Development Specialist with the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County's Family Health and Wellness Program. Tim specializes in youth development with a focus on the preteen and teen years. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Education from St. John's University and his Master in Education in Human Development from the University of Vermont. He has lectured to parents across Nassau and Suffolk County, and we welcome Tim here today at Teen TV on Public Access Television.
Hello, Kathy.
Welcome. Tim, before we focus more on active parenting, can you just kind of set the landscape for what kinds of issues teens are facing today?
Well, I think almost everybody's in agreement that in addition to the regular adolescent development issues of forming your own identity, deciding about your future, relationships with peers, there are lots of other things that never appeared generations ago. Social media, the whole peer culture, especially the whole drug culture with drugs that never existed years ago. Bullying, cyberbullying, growing up in a world of violence, a world of terrorism. I mean, there's so many kinds of other issues out there that teens are either affected by or have to deal with directly. And so it makes it hard. So they have their regular developmental issues and that every teen, every generation had, and then they have all these new issues that are part of the culture.
Right, and it seems as though today's teens are also growing up very, very fast. It almost seems as if they almost need a handbook on how do you survive under these times.
Yeah.
Can they survive?
Well, it's both fast in terms of things are happening earlier and earlier at earlier ages, but it's also slow in a ways is that some things are postponed. They're not, not being independent at age 18. So in some cases, you have people, young adults living in their homes in their mid-20s when 2 generations ago they were outside the home. So you have this interesting sort of thing where things are happening earlier and quicker and more intense in some ways, but then also you have teenagers postponing some of the tasks that are part of adulthood because of finances, just because of, again, society that they live in, the costs of things, the need for more education, so that you also have this longer period of adolescence.
Right, and so what kind of skills might kids today need as compared to years back?
Well, I think probably the single biggest skill that young people need is problem solving, coping and problem solving skills. Being able to quickly respond, understand what's happening, and being able to identify alternatives and pick solutions that will work for them, because it's changing so rapidly that solutions that worked in the past are not even relevant anymore. So they have to be able to make decisions, explore alternatives, solve problems that they face on a daily basis and year to year, and then also there's a lot of stress with all of this, so they need good coping mechanisms, healthy coping mechanisms for the stresses.
Right, and in today's education setting, we talk about Common Core, and there is such emphasis on just academics. But turning back to the teens and the quality of their character, how is it and how do character get developed with teens? What kinds of qualities are we really looking for our kids today?
Well, I think we're looking for the same qualities we want in adults in the workplace and in families. We want them to be trustworthy, to have a moral compass, to make good decisions make good ethical decisions. We want them to be reliable, dependable. We want them to participate in a democracy. which means you've got to work with other people, you've got to be cooperative, you've got to be able to listen to others, but also speak your mind and have a voice. So all of those are part of developing character, and the influences are multiple: parents, teachers, even peers. I mean, peers are a huge influence in helping develop strong values and character traits.
And as part of that development, what might be some major tasks that kids are going through as they move on towards adulthood?
Well, the biggest one is the issue of independence. You know, how do you be able to be dependent on yourself, also not codependent, but reliable, cooperative with others, but being able to find a sense of autonomy, how you can be able to stand up for yourself, forming an identity, who you're going to be, which includes thinking about your future. What are you going to be in the future? What is part of your identity now? What are your values? What's your self-image? What's your level of self-esteem? But also how that translate into the future? What plans you make for the future? And I think the other thing that's a big part of the task of adolescence is relationships with your peers, relationships with other adults, the changing relationship with your parent, and ultimately forming the capacity for intimacy. That means being able to be in a relationship with people in which there's mutual respect, there's reciprocity, there's sharing, cooperation, all those kinds of things.
Now, what happens as, the fact that these are all very complicated issues for kids to work through adolescence, and their brain is still being developed.
Yes.
Tell us how that brain gets involved or can interfere with healthy development.
Yeah, well, we know now through more current research in the past decade that the teen brain is developing at a very rapid rate. It's comparable to the first year of life. There's a process called pruning in which the wiring in the brain that's not being used is sort of lost, and the other parts of the brain that are used a lot is reinforced. And part of this process is developing what they call the executive functions. And these are the prefrontal lobe, where the basic skills, cognitive skills of problem solving, decision making, judgment, empathy, that's where all of those skills reside, those abilities reside. And it's actually, what's interesting, what we've learned is that that's actually the last thing to develop in the brain, in the teen brain.
The decision-making.
Yeah, the decision-making, the judgment. So what it means is that a young adolescent in particular, middle adolescents between the ages of 11 to 14, 11 to 15, this is not fully developed. In fact, research is suggesting that it's not fully developed to age 25, which means that we have to expect that adolescents will make some mistakes in judgment, that some of their thinking ability will, in order to figure out something and predict consequences, will be a little bit impaired because it's not fully developed.
It sounds very complicated for parents. You've got all different personalities. Kids are going through development at different times. I would imagine parents might have different styles in terms of approaching their teens. Can you tell us about the styles of parenting that are happening today?
Yeah, the research is pretty clear on parenting styles and what works and what doesn't. Essentially, there are three styles. In the active parenting program, they call the one style the dictator, which in research we refer to as the authoritarian style. And this is basically the parent who's the boss. It's my way, the highway. That's that style. And then at the other end of the continuum is the style that they call the doormat, which is in research is called the permissive indulgent parent. And this is the parenting style where essentially the kid's sort of in charge because the parent is either not paying attention or unwilling to enforce rules or even to set rules. And in the middle, and research has supported this for a very long time, is what we call the democratic parent, sometimes referred to as the authoritative parent. And this parent's approaches work together. In other words, their approach is, we have limits, you have freedoms, we're going to make these work together, and ultimately we'll develop, you'll end up being responsible for yourself, and that's my goal.
Right, hence the active parenting
Right.
phrase that we
That's what we use, yeah. We use that for the active parent, and we actually also use the phrase the proactive parent because that style is more likely to be able to adapt to the changes in adolescence and going into young adulthood. They're able to predict better, and they're able to work through things together for more satisfactory solutions.
Right. You know, sometimes we see with parenting, a lot of, talked about the doormat or the authoritarian parent. Some parents want to be friends with their parents. Tell us a little bit about what is the purpose of parenting from a theoretical perspective.
Right. Well, in the active parenting program, the primary purpose is to protect and prepare kids. And that's, by the way, not just active parenting of teens, but the other active parenting programs starting from a very young age. So they believe that's the goal of parenting, to prepare, to protect and prepare for, protect the young person and prepare them for adulthood. And I say that teens don't need parents to be a friend. They have their friends. They do need adults to be friendly. I mean, you shouldn't be unfriendly towards them, but they don't need another friend. They have their own friendship group. And in fact, trying to be too friendly leads to that doormat style, that permissive, indulgent style, in which the parent then becomes unwilling, because they don't want to jeopardize the friendship, quote, they become unwilling to enforce the rules or follow up or apply the consequences or have serious discussions.
Right. So if one is an active parent, one can guide your child more towards a healthy development, towards a caring adult, one who would be responsible in society, as well as reduce substance use, possibly. Can you tell us how the program might assist kids
in prevention? Yes.
In prevention.
Well, I think the key to the democratic active parenting authoritative style, however we label it, the key to it is that the parent is involved in the young person's life, in the teenager or the young adult's life, and they pay attention, and they're also willing to, when there are things to protect the child, there are things that they will demand in terms of, for example, curfew and not tolerating drug use. But a lot of issues, what they really want to do is have discussions with the young person so that they practice the problem solving that not only helps the parent define what the limits are going to be, but helps the young person then, when they're out on their own, also have that problem solving skill so they can figure out for themselves what's right or wrong in certain situations.
Right, so cooperation is paved with good communication is
Yes.
the saying.
Yeah.
So kids are growing up, they want to be more independent, and they want to move on to more adult-like things, like let's say driving. Where safety is a huge concern for
Absolutely.
parents. So how do parents persuasively communicate to their teen the safety aspects of having that responsibility on the road behind the wheel of a car?
Yeah. Well, driving is a really good example because clearly that it's a risky behavior in the sense that young people, when they're first drivers, they're inexperienced drivers. We know that when there are lots of teens in a car, that's an unsafe situation. We know that if there's any, which never should happen, but if they're under any influence of anything, that's an unsafe situation. So the parent has huge concerns. And it's a huge risk for parents to allow kids either have their own car or drive the parent's car. So that to me is a really prime time for you to sit down with your teenager and have a conversation and work out a plan of how this car is going to be used. You have the teens' goals that they want to be able to drive whenever they can, and you have the parents' goal of you have to share the car, you have to share the costs, you have to be safe, and that's the beginning of a dialogue, talking about what you're going to do. I really recommend in something like driving that you actually put your what you discuss and the talking points and what you decided in writing after you've had this conversation. And so communication is really the way that not only by expressing what you're concerned about and listening to the teen, you show that you care and that you want to keep them safe, but you also identify what are the kinds of things that will become unsafe and how do we figure that out, how do we solve that.
And in that kind of conversation, what might block a healthy dialogue?
Oh, there's a lot of things. We call them communication blockers. Sometimes they call them door closes, but and many times the parent does it. Sometimes the teen will do it too. But the parent, things like, for example, lecturing a young person, preaching to them, moralizing, sarcasm is a big one, criticism. Teens often identify, and even other adults identify, constantly focusing on past mistakes. The what they did wrong in the past without a chance to do something different, but bringing back these past mistakes, anything that went wrong, and so just saying no because of that instead of trying to move forward and seeing how we can improve things. So there are a lot of door blocker communication closers like that that block communication, and what we try to tell parents in this program is to be conscious of those things and avoid them. And usually the first thing you're aware of is that the minute you try to you do some of this, where you start giving unwanted advice, or you start preaching to a young person, then you can see them just sort of shutting down and not listening anymore. That's your signal to stop what you're doing and do something better, which is active communication.
This is a great time for us to stop and take a break, and we'll be hearing from Town of North Hempstead Supervisor Judy Bosworth, who'll be telling us how all of us have a role in the prevention of teen prescription drug use.
Hi, I'm Judy Bosworth, Supervisor of the Town of North Hempstead. Every day in our country, 44 people die from a prescription painkiller overdose, and many more become addicted. I am here today to tell you how all of us can play an important role in helping combat the misuse of prescription drugs. The town's Stop Throwing Out Pollutants, or STOP program, offers residents an opportunity to clean out their medicine cabinets and discard unnecessary and unwanted medications in an environmentally safe manner while protecting our kids. You should also lock your meds at home, as more than 70% of teens who abuse prescription drugs get them from friends or family. Please join us in our efforts to combat prescription drug abuse. For more information about the Town of North Hempstead's STOP program, please call our 311 call center. Thank you, and please remember to lock your meds.
Welcome back. We're talking about active parenting of teens with Tim Jahn, Human Development Specialist with the Cornell Cooperative Extension of Suffolk County's Family Health and Wellness Program. Tim, at this time we'd like to turn to our teens in the studio who would like to ask a few questions.
Hi, I'm Philip Passes. I'm a junior at Manhasset High School. My question is, what kinds of communication make parents feel disrespected?
Well, I'll tell you, the biggest one that comes up in the workshops is when teens roll their eyes. Which is, of course, a form of, it's nonverbal communication, but parents start to initiate a talk and they roll their eyes. But when they are on their cell phone and not making eye contact, that's another one. Some other kinds of things that parents have told me is when they sigh. All these things communicate to the parent that you really don't want to talk right now, that you're not listening, and even if it's not intended to be disrespectful, it feels disrespectful to them. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
So what kind of things can kids do in that regard? As they approach a conversation with their parents, how might a teen prepare themselves?
Well, communication, we teach this all the time in active parenting, but also other programs. Communication is two-way, and the parent can block communication, but the teen can do it too. And again, if the teen uses a tone of voice talking back, the teen really just wants to have a voice, but if they use a tone of voice that sounds angry, sounds defiant, the parent interprets that as disrespect. And then all of a sudden there's an argument happening and the real issue is lost. It dissolves into just an argument, and then name calling and other kinds of things can happen as a result, and then there's no communication, no dialogue.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, I'm Aaron Banwer. I'm a sophomore at Great Neck South High School, and my question is, what kinds of actions might break down communication between teens and a parent?
Well, one of the biggest, actually, believe it or not, and it's sort of neutral, is time. Sometimes, you're in high school, sometimes adolescents, their lives are busy, so the parent and the adolescent are like ships passing in the night. And there are some things that require time. Some kinds of conversations actually require you to sit down and spend some time. There are other kinds of distractions. Both of you, your parent and yourself, have busy lives, so that interferes, that limits the time that you have. More specifically, I think what happens is when the teen wants to talk, sometimes the parent doesn't want to listen, doesn't want to pay attention and listen. And sometimes when the parent wants to communicate something, the teens, so finding the right place and finding enough time is sort of really important if you're going to have meaningful conversations that are going to address some serious issues, like, for example, substance abuse or driving a car or planning for college.
All right, thank you.
So if something's very important to a teen, he or she might look to see when the parent maybe isn't cooking dinner or running out the door for an errand, and vice versa.
Yeah, timing is really important. And in addition to the specific behaviors, you know, I mentioned some of the nonverbals that turn both the parents and the teenagers off. Tone of voice is very critical, but sometimes even just the environment itself and timing, time and place is really important. I do suggest to parents that if your young person comes to you and has something that they really need to talk about, that you make an extra effort to find the time and place to do that, and as soon as possible. But it's not always possible. So sometimes you have to have a conversation just about, listen, it's not the time is not great right now, but how about tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning, or first thing tomorrow afternoon after school?
Make a plan.
You make a plan.
Make a plan. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Allison Einberg. I'm a senior at Roslyn High School, and my question is, what kind of communication from teens do you like and do you find helpful?
From teens? Okay, so that's a good question. So what I actually like, I've worked with young people most of my life. I do like it when they initiate something. In other words, when they show an interest in talking. And I do like it when they're willing to disclose, especially there's some young people, they'll tell their peers lots of things, but they need to have a lot of trust with an adult. So, and the disclosure is the one way that you get at some of the issues that are really worrying a teen. That, teens are stressed about lots of things, and so being able to share important information. The parent or the adult on the other side has to be a good listener. They have to be non-judgmental. They got to open the door for that to happen. I like it when we can look at each other in the eye and we can say, okay, we're not going to have the TV on or the cell phone, so let's shut these things down so there's not distractions. And I actually like when, for me, I like it when teenagers are assertive, when they actually are not afraid to say what they're thinking or what they're feeling, so that they trust you enough that they can say something even if they think you're going to disagree with it, because that's a good conversation. When you disagree and you can disagree respectfully, I think it's a good conversation.
Right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go back to channels of communication just a little bit.
Yes, because we touched on them a little bit. Yeah.
We could use words, but
Yes.
how we use our words, especially for kids, if kids speak their mind, I think, as well as adults,
Yes.
we always have to be mindful of.
Right. Well,
Tone.
Yes, tone of voice and your nonverbals. I mentioned, because parents always mention to me, the eye rolling. But there's lots of other ways that you can be dismissive. You can turn your back to somebody. So these are what we'll call nonverbal language, and they communicate a lot. I'll give you a good example. Sometimes we ask another person, say a parent asking a teenager, how was your day? And the body language is sort of slumped, and the tone of voice is sad, okay. And that communicates something different. It communicates not okay. And so I think in good communication, we need to pay attention to all of those. It's not always nonverbals that communicate disrespect. It's oftentimes some nonverbals that communicate there's another issue going on. And even though I say I'm okay or I don't want to talk right now, your tone of voice, your posture, your nonverbal language, your eye contact, looking down, communicates something different. And it's important for both the parents and the young person to pay attention to that. By the way, these are good skills for teens to use with their peers, too. It's just not, communication is good on all relationships, not just the parent-child relationship.
Right. So in terms of listening, tell us a little bit more about how one is an active listener.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I always ask everybody in my workshops is, tell me who's a good listener. And it's so interesting because when I work with adults, a lot of times their best listener is a close friend. It's not necessarily their partner or their children or their boss at work. So it's very interesting, and it's probably true kids too. Probably kids would say the same thing. The best listener is not a teacher and not a parent, it's a friend. And I say, well, what is it? What makes a good listener? Well, a couple of things. First of all, they don't judge. They give you attention, and they give you attention by leaning forward, creating a space so they Good listening includes recognizing feelings and acknowledging feelings and responding to feelings, because feelings sometimes are the issue. How you feel about something is also how you think about something. They don't interrupt. They give you space to talk. And I think the important thing in the act of parenting, they identify paying attention, responding to feelings, and also empathy. I think when they show understanding, they show caring, that makes a good listener.
Right. You know, a lot of times, you know, when parents are approaching their teens, as well as their younger children, they're filled with emotion. And often things come out from finger pointing to raising one's voice. I've heard of I statements. Can you share with us maybe a little bit about I statements and how that might diffuse kids really absorbing the brunt of a parent's emotional state?
Yeah. It's a tool that is throughout all the active parenting programs and in many other programs for parent education. The I message or I statement. And what's effective about them is two things primarily. One is we avoid the you statement. For example, a parent telling a teenager, you know, you're always irresponsible. Say they didn't follow up on a chore or they didn't clean their room. You're always irresponsible. Automatically, that leads to a defensive response on the part of the other person. But an I message does a couple other things. It takes ownership for your feelings. So, for example, a young person hasn't followed through on a chore. The parents are saying, you're so careless, you're so irresponsible, you don't care about anything. That's a communication blocker right there. It just will stop communication in its tracks. On the other hand, if a parent uses an I message for, you know, I'm very frustrated when I ask you to do something and you don't follow through, because then I feel like I'm nagging you, or then I feel that I have to do this, and I don't like doing that, and I don't like being like this. It's a whole different tone of voice and approach, and it doesn't necessarily mean it will change things, but it opens the door for more conversation. And the you message is when you accuse somebody of something, usually closes the door right away and leads to, again, anger on the part of the other person or defensive reactions. So we use I messages for parents to be able to stay calm, express what they're really feeling and why they're feeling this way, and then leave it like that so that we allow a response from the young person.
Great, great. Thanks so much, Tim. Our time is up for today.
Okay.
We'd like to thank Tim Jahn as well as the staff and teens here on Teen TV at Public Access Television. In closing, parenting is not easy, especially in today's fast-paced and high-tech world where teens seem to mature overnight. In Nassau County, 54% of students reported that they are positively attached to their family. And that's great, because when young people feel they are a valued part of their family, they are less likely to engage in substance use and other problem behaviors. We hope today's program has been informative and provided new ideas to strengthen your family relationship and encourage teens to grow up healthy and independent young adults. For additional resources about communicating with your child, please go to our website at manhassetcasa.org or like us on Facebook. Until next time, this is Kathy Samuels, Project Director with Manhasset Casa, wishing you and your family a healthy and safe tomorrow. Thank you.